Hey, this is Terry Virts. Before we get started with Down to Earth today, if you like this show, please subscribe and leave us a positive review. And now on to the episode. Hello and welcome to Down to Earth with Terry Virts, where we talk about what matters down here on planet Earth. And today I have an awesome guest. It's Chris Benninger from Guide Dogs for the Blind. Chris, welcome.
Thank you so much, Terry. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Dogs are one of my favorite, you can never go wrong talking about dogs.
I would agree with you.
So, right, that's in this craziness, there's lots of bad news and dogs are always a good news story. So, I want to hear all about Guide Dogs for the Blind and how you got involved and how that whole process works, because it's amazing. But first, I'll just share a quick story about me. I was on a flight to Hong Kong a couple of years ago and clicking through the movies, and I saw this film called Pick of the Litter. You've probably heard of it.
Yes, I have.
And I watched it, and oh my God, I was like, I was hoping that my fellow passengers weren't watching me. It was the most amazing movie. And I got on the airplane Wi-Fi and I did this big donation for Guide Dogs for the Blind because it was such an amazing organization from the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And then, so I've gotten in touch with several of your folks to reach out to just see how I can help. And it ended up with me adopting. I'm not adopting is not the right word, but I guess sponsoring a puppy. There was a new litter coming up. So we'll talk about Brooks and I named him Brooks because I got to name him, which was amazing. But I'm a big Baltimore Orioles fan, and Brooks Robinson was the best, one of the best Orioles of all time. So that's how he got his name. But it was interesting because the litters come and they're by letter, right? I think I was told like I had a B litter and a D litter and an F litter or something. So you have to pick a name. Is that right?
That's correct. So we breed 950 puppies a year. Each one of our program dogs has a unique name. So when you're looking at all of our puppies, all of our dogs in service, and you're ready to name a dog, right? There's 4,000 names you can't use.
Wow.
A baby book has 2,000 names in it. So
I said, hey, can you do this and that? And they were like, no.
Yeah, right.
I thought, man, this is gonna be tough. Yeah.
I know. So what's exciting for us here is when a name comes up that's like a normal name, like Larry,
right,
or Bob, as opposed to pasta or
right.
Camry, or we have to be pretty creative with some of our names. Yeah.
So there's going to come a point, hopefully, where you're just out of names. It's kind of like the hurricane season this year. We had to go into the Greek alphabet. Like, you may need some foreign names.
Well, we do, if a dog comes out of service, so if a dog's retired, then the name goes back into the pool. So we're able to reuse a name as long as the dog is no longer in service. Yeah.
Okay. So it's not like the baseball team that retires the jersey number forever. You can unretire the jersey number.
We can unretire the jersey number. Yes, we can.
Right.
Yes.
So how did you get involved with Guide Dogs for the Blind? How does one come to be the CEO of this amazing organization?
I appreciate you asking that because I feel very honored and grateful, actually, to be part of Guide Dogs for the Blind. I had a bit of a circuitous route with my career. I actually sort of started in the for-profit world. I had a CPA, I got an MBA, I worked for Hewlett Packard for 15 years. And then my career took a left turn, which was great. I left Hewlett Packard and went into the nonprofit world, and I spent 17 years with Humane Society Silicon Valley. I truly believe in the power of the human-animal bond. And after 17 years, I retired from Humane Society Silicon Valley, and it turns out that this position opened up. And Guide Dogs for the Blind is the human-animal bond on steroids, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
right.
It's unbelievable what our dogs do and what our dogs do for our clients. And so I applied for the job, and I was really honored to be picked for it. And I've been here 7 years.
Okay. And CEO for 7 or
CEO for 7.
the whole time? Okay. That's
Yeah.
amazing. You start in private industry and then go into charity. I think it's a pretty common career path. This podcast is brand new. I've only done a few episodes. You're one of the first ones. And the very first guy that was on here, Larry Copald, is the CEO of the Carbon Underground. It's an environmental organization, but he had a similar thing. He was in the advertising world for years and then moved into charity, which is pretty cool to bring the skill set from the private sector into the charity world.
It is. I will say that if I were to do it over again, I would do it the same way.
Mm-hmm.
You learn so much in the for-profit sector.
Right.
But in the nonprofit world, it's all about heart, right?
Right.
You go home every day feeling good that you've done something that makes a difference in someone's life,
Right.
as opposed to enhancing shareholder wealth.
Right.
So for me, I wouldn't go back.
Right.
But I'm glad I was there because I learned
Right.
a lot. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And like you said, the human animal bond, I think Guide Dogs for the Blind is the coolest organization because I love dogs and I love people and like people who really need something. I want to talk about blindness and what that means and all the degrees later in the show, but let's talk about dogs.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so Pick of the Litter. First of all, can you describe that movie? Did Guide Dogs produce it, or you were clearly a partner with it?
We were approached by the 2 documentary filmmakers to actually do this particular documentary. So these were 2 individuals who were local to the Bay Area, knew about Guide Dogs for the Blind, had always wanted to make a film about guide dogs. And their premise was, because not every dog that we breed makes it all the way through to guide, as you find out in the film.
Yes.
And
very few do, right?
And so they wanted to do, a film that brought that story to life, but also brought some of that, tension in, and not certain who's going to make it and who's not, because it's a path, and ultimately our dogs choose their career. They ultimately choose whether they want to be a guide or not. All of our dogs are perfect, absolutely perfect, but not everybody wants the same career. So
right. It was an amazing movie, and so my new career, I was an astronaut, as you know, and the last few years, I actually directed my first documentary last year.
Did you?
I did, yeah. I'll have to send you a link. It's called One More Orbit. You can get it on Amazon or iTunes or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was a documentary about setting a world record flying around Earth.
Wow.
But I kind of fell in love with directing, and telling those stories is super important. I did another space photography documentary last year called Cosmic Perspective. So I would love to do a guide dog one, but it's already been made. So
there's lots of guide dog stories, though.
There are amazing
stories to tell. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have to talk about that later. So Pick of the Litter, was that a big boost for your organization, having that film out?
It made a huge difference for us. I mean, as a nonprofit, clearly the vast majority of our funds go into our mission versus promoting our mission, right?
Right.
But we need to raise visibility around who we are and what we do, in order to garner support from our communities.
Right.
So this is always sort of the challenging thing for a nonprofit, right? So this was fantastic for us. I mean, absolutely nobody expected this particular documentary to become as popular as it did. It went worldwide. It won a number of awards from film festivals, literally all over the world.
Yeah.
It's now being carried on Netflix. I mean, none of us expected that to happen. And so it has helped raise visibility around our work. And that's been tremendous. I mean, that really has been.
Yeah, that's why we're talking right now, is because I saw that film. Like it's
Right.
it's it's a great. I want to get in touch with the filmmakers too. It would be nice just to
Oh,
tell them
they're
good
they're
job. Yeah,
fantastic. They
yeah,
they
I would
absolutely
love that.
are. And what's been fun for me, is, I mean, we all wear, you can't see the logo here, but we all wear logo gear, and
Right,
I'll be in the grocery store and somebody will go, "Oh my God, you work for Guide Dogs for the Blind?"
right.
Yeah, I do. I saw the movie. So
Yeah, it's amazing.
that's really fun. Yeah.
It was so awesome. So the movie takes us through this, but remember when we were kids, they had Schoolhouse Rock and
Yes. Yes.
how a bill becomes a law.
Right.
So can you do that for how a puppy becomes a guide dog? Like what kind of puppies do you get? Where do you get them from? This is an amazing story.
So we do have our own breeding colony, and it's actually the largest colony of labs and golden retrievers in North America.
Wow.
We exchange, in order to keep that colony from becoming inbred, we literally exchange DNA all over the world, and that's usually it's typically in the form of sperm. So frozen sperm is exchanged all over the world, um, in order to keep our colonies vibrant and,
Hmm.
from becoming inbred. But once our litters are born, we actually start the training process at 3 days of age. So our puppies start their socialization when they're 3 days of age, and we have volunteers that are called cuddlers,
Hmm.
and they sit with our babies when they're starting at 3 days of age, and they literally, that's what they do, is they cuddle them. They touch them, they cuddle them. I know, isn't that a great job?
What a job. Yeah.
I know.
Wow.
And the reason for that is that we want to start early on with our dogs being very comfortable with people, right?
Hmm.
And so that there's nothing scary at all about a person. And then as those puppies begin to grow, then we start more and more socialization, introducing them the sights and sounds and different types of surfaces, because there's a 10-week period in a puppy's life when they're not afraid of anything. And at 10
Hmm.
weeks, fear starts to, that's something that for all of us as mammals, right? For humans, it comes a little bit later, but fear starts to come into their lives. So we want to introduce them to as much as we can before that sort of fear factor comes in. Um, and then at, between 8 and 10 weeks of age, they go out to our puppy raisers, where they're in our puppy raiser homes for a year, learning house manners, introduced to even more things, buses and trains and planes and grocery stores and office buildings and shopping malls and
Hmm.
children and, other types of animals. And then after, at about 15, 16 weeks or months, excuse me, they come back to one of our campuses and they learn their guide skills. So
Wow. So that puppy raiser is a job also,
it
a
is a
volunteer
job.
job, I assume. Yeah.
It is, and we have 2,000 puppy raisers in the 10 western states, as far east as Texas.
Right.
And our puppy raisers are incredible. They're absolutely incredible. They're organized into clubs, and then those
Hmm.
clubs are overseen by GDB staff. And there's a very specific methodology for raising our dogs.
Hmm.
All of our training methods are positive reinforcement based, so we don't do any, punishment type
Hmm.
of training at all.
Hmm.
And so that's, not only is it critically important, but it also impacts a dog's willingness to work, because work becomes fun.
Right.
They know that when they go to work, they get praised and treated, and hey, this is cool,
Right. Right.
as opposed to punished.
That's amazing. So you should, like the guide dog method or whatever, of how to raise a dog would be really interesting, even for just normal dog owners who aren't going to be official. Have you done that? Like, is there a way to
You
learn
know, it's a great idea, Terry. We haven't sort of, um, I mean, we're willing to share our methodologies. There's
right,
nothing secret about it. And in fact,
right,
it's something that literally, we'd love
right.
every dog owner to do, because
Yeah.
we shouldn't
It
be punishing
works.
dogs. It
Yeah.
works. It
Yeah. It's
works.
amazing.
And what's interesting too, I found this wasn't something that I did, but about 15 years ago, Guide Dogs was the first service organization anywhere in the world to adopt positive reinforcement training.
Hmm.
Um, so honestly, service dogs were trained by pretty brutal methods up
Right.
until 15 years ago. And
Wow.
Guide Dogs was the first organization to make that switch. And when we made that switch, what we found, interestingly enough, is it took half the time to train a dog with its guide
Wow.
skills than with punishment training. Yeah.
Wow. So there's your next documentary. Maybe we'll have to talk
Yes. Yeah.
afterwards. That's pretty
Yes.
amazing.
It is.
Um, so, when I got involved with Brooks, I got the local Texas puppy raisers. So Texas A&M, there's a puppy raising club. It's a young
Mm-hmm.
lady runs it, and I think she's a student there, maybe a recent student. Anyway, so she brought down to Houston, where I live, a puppy, and it was like 6 months old or something. And we went out for lunch, and we were just talking about guide dogs for the blind for like an hour. The 6 month old sat next to me, didn't say a word for an hour. And then when we were done with lunch, we walked out and she said, "Do your business." And the dog ran over and went to the bathroom. Like, I was blown away. And this wasn't a guide dog. This was just a puppy, right? This was a
Yeah.
pre-guide dog. It was amazing at how good this dog was. Cause you met the two Golden Retrievers. Those, I mean, they're the best, but these dogs would not pass your, wouldn't pass the cuddling phase, or they would never want to come out of the cuddling phase, because that's all they want to do. Um, and you mentioned how the dogs love to work. Isn't that amazing? Like, especially some breeds, like a German Shepherd, all they want to do is for you to tell them something to obey you, or Huskies just want to run with dragging something through the snow. Or it's amazing how dogs have that instinct.
They do. I mean, if you think about it, we're all alike, right? Each one of us wants to have some sort of purpose in life,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Each one of us, humans, and that
Right.
goes for our dog companions as well.
Right.
Everybody wants to make a contribution. We all do it in different ways, right? But yes, dogs want to work. Dogs want to please their person by working.
Right.
Too.
Absolutely.
That's part of that formula.
Yeah. So I've had a Golden Retriever now for over 30 years. And
Great
the
dog.
first one was Einstein. He was this smartest, most stubborn dog, but he was like unbelievably smart.
Yep.
He was named after the Back to the Future dog. But Goldens, they want to please, and that's not what you necessarily want, right? In a guide, I remember learning that selective disobedience or something like that is the hardest trait, most important trait.
Yeah, intelligent disobedience, right?
Okay.
But pleasing is a key part of the working sort of formula.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole concept of intelligent disobedience, which is that our dogs have to make a decision when given a command about whether to obey that command or not, based on whether it's going to be safe for their person.
Right.
Now, that is the key reason why not all of our dogs end up becoming guide dogs, because even for ourselves, I mean, how often do we say no to our boss?
Right.
Not that often, really,
Right. I'm writing a project about Columbia and Challenger, the two space shuttle accidents. And you know, those are stories of that exact thing.
Right.
Wow, that's an amazing thing. So is that the hardest trait? Is that the most common disqualification?
It is the most common disqualification. And then, after that, at a much lower scale, uh, it's fear with regards to some sort of issue. Sometimes we'll have a dog that is fearful of buses or
Hmm.
loud noises,
Right.
or
The Fourth of
and you
July.
can't have that, right? Um,
Right.
or there's some sort of a medical issue that would disqualify. So, my dog, who you met earlier,
Hmm.
Thea,
Right.
who is, she's absolutely perfect. Um, and she's had all this great training. My job is to make certain I don't ruin her because I want to train her. But she has some slight hip dysplasia. So
Ah,
she would have made a perfect guide dog. She's got the temperament we're looking for, but
right.
um, you know, her body just wasn't exactly perfect.
Right.
So
That's a problem with Goldens, right?
it is, interestingly enough, it is not a huge issue within our colony. And the
Hmm.
reason it's not is because we, test for hip dysplasia fairly early on.
Right.
And so, and particularly for our dogs that become breeders, we want to make certain, that doesn't exist within them or
Right.
within their litter mates, right? So we want to make certain it's not in their line at all.
Do the guide dogs themselves breed, or is it the ones who didn't make it through the training?
So, so actually, we pull the best of the best of the best to be our breeders, right? So the
Wow.
top of the line become the breeders. But think about it, it's because it's
Right.
their DNA that
Right.
we want replicated to become guide dogs.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
for our puppy raisers, there's a lot of excitement when one of their dogs becomes a breeder.
That's the
That's the
top
top of the
graduates.
line, the
Right.
top of the line. Um, and so, and we call it career
Huh.
change, by the way,
Right. Right.
because every dog's perfect. So, um, and what I mean by that is that, many of our dogs, if they don't become guide dogs, go on to other illustrious careers. We work with a lot of other service agencies,
Hmm.
and our dogs become PTSD dogs,
Hmm.
wheelchair assist dogs, autism dogs, search and rescue. I mean, so, most of our dogs end up with some sort of amazing career.
Right. My dog Brooks, I think, is in Austin for service dog training. So, excuse me, I'll have to go over there and see him. So that's a good point I wanted to bring up. In the pandemic, um, I want to ask you, so how has the pandemic affected you, especially how do you get dogs around since they can't fly on airlines anymore, right?
Yeah. So, the pandemic has been a challenge for us, and for a number of reasons. One is that our business is, by nature, does not socially distance.
Right.
Think
It's
about it.
social. Right.
It is social, and particularly when we train our clients. So we've had to sort of recreate our business. Um, and we had to, do it within a very short period of time. So we went into lockdown almost exactly a year ago.
Right.
It took us about 4 months to sort of realign, recreate our business in order to accommodate social distancing, um, safety, working in cohort groups as opposed to, working more broadly across, our employee base,
Hmm.
um, figuring out, how we were going to, be transporting our dogs, how we were going to be training clients. And so, with regards to transportation, we do have what we call our puppy trucks. And so, while we are in 10 Western states, um, uh, there's only a few of those states that we actually fly dogs to. Most we drive our puppies to. So we were able to continue to do puppy deliveries, um, as well as bring back those dogs that are ready to come back for training.
Right.
And with regards to those states like Texas, for
Yeah.
instance, we have engaged volunteer pilots who have been unbelievable in transporting our dogs out to Texas, our puppies out to Texas, and then bringing back adult dogs that are ready for training. So we've
Right.
had to be creative during this time. Yeah.
So I'll just say right now, if you've got an airplane, a private jet, or you're able to fly dogs, especially Texas to California and Oregon, is that right? Portland?
That's correct. Yes. So
Okay.
our in California, we're just outside of San Francisco, and
Right.
in Oregon, we're just outside of Portland.
Okay. So if you can, and you fly to Dallas or Houston or uh,
Um,
Austin,
we have puppies all over Texas,
all over.
but
Right. Okay.
right,
Okay.
right.
So if you
So
can help with that route, contact Guide Dogs for the Blind because they need
please
help.
do,
At
please
least
do.
until the airlines start flying
Right,
dogs again. Hopefully that will be soon, but it's not going to be anytime really soon. So we
right.
need to help. So your facilities, you've got the official guide dog like training. The Top Gun is there in San Francisco and Portland, and puppy raising is all around these 10 Western states.
That's correct.
And
That's
breeding is where at the two
all
headquarters or
right. So all of our breeding is actually done here in California, because now all of our breeders are actually housed with volunteers, because our model is a little bit different than a lot of service agencies. So we believe it's important that our dogs live comfortably as, as pets, as dogs, in
right,
homes and loving homes, as opposed to, living, in kennels on our campus for 2 to 3 years. Yeah.
right.
So,
Yeah, that makes
all
sense
over.
to get used
Yeah.
to it.
Well, it's also the theory too that if mom and dad are less stressed, then babies are going to be less stressed too. So,
Right. Hmm. So they go from cuddling to puppy raising, and the puppy raisers teach them basic dog life and the basic skills like do your business is when it's time to go to the bathroom and other things. What
right.
other things do puppy raisers have to teach them?
So all of their house manners. So one of the things that, when you and I were talking, I wanted Thea to get up so she could see you on the camera.
Right.
So she's been taught not to jump on the furniture.
Right.
So when I'm trying to get her up, she's looking at me in horror. Like,
Right.
what are you doing?
Right.
So, all of their house manners, walking appropriately on a leash, learning
Right.
to settle. So when you met Brooks, and you said that, you didn't even know Brooks was there for that
Yeah.
hour that you were together. That's a key skill, particularly if you think about a puppy,
Yeah.
they're
It
pretty
was it was
rambunctious.
amazing. It was
Right,
amazing. Right.
right. They're taught not to bark.
Wow.
So, and why is that? Because a service dog has to be part of society, right? And fit in. And if you've got a barking dog, that becomes a problem for people,
Hmm.
right? People don't want to listen to a barking dog. You don't want to be in a meeting. If you had, a guide dog by your side right now, you don't want that dog jumping up and barking,
Hmm.
right? So they're taught not to bark.
Right.
Um, and so what that also means is that a guide dog is not a protection dog.
They're not guard dogs for the blind. They're guide dogs for the blind.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And the breeds that we've chosen specifically are breeds that are very social breeds. So labs and golden retrievers, right?
Right.
And that's specifically because, if you're blind or you're visually impaired, that's very isolating to begin with.
Hmm.
And particularly if you go through life with a cane, that's even more isolating. Most people feel really uncomfortable.
Right.
Um, I don't know if I should talk to somebody with cane or not, but
Right.
if you have a dog, I mean,
Oh,
everybody wants to talk to you.
instant. Yeah. The best way to meet girls is to, as a guy, is to have your golden retriever, and then you'll, everybody wants to.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so it's really a social bridge for our
Right.
clients. It's their way of being able to, be part of the community. And so having a dog that is welcoming and, really happy to see people is an important part of that.
Which breeds do better, Goldens or Labs?
You know, um, well, I, I will say that overall, probably the lab does
Yeah,
better.
I can
Um,
believe that.
you know, it's interesting about Goldens. I love Goldens, and my girl is a Golden.
Hmm.
Um, as you know, they're very sensitive dogs.
Hmm.
They take a little bit longer to mature. So a
Hmm.
lab is ready to do this job of being a guide dog at 18 months of age.
Wow.
Um, it usually takes, a Golden until they're probably closer to 2 years of age.
Right.
They just need a little bit more time to mature.
Hmm.
The interesting thing about the two is that labs are pretty good about telling you when they're ready to retire. And
Hmm.
that's usually around 10 or 11. And they start telling you, something, 2 weeks, the couch is mine. That's it. We're not doing this anymore, right?
Right.
And this is something I choke up about.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
because Goldens have such a high pleasing factor. They will not stop working.
Oh,
They
wow.
literally will work till they drop in
Work
harness.
until the day they die. Yeah.
Yeah,
But the Goldens, like I said, been 30 years of Golden Retrievers, and I can't, there's all they want to do is lick and play and,
they
eat,
do.
get treats and go for walks. That's all they want to do. So
They do.
it would
And
take, maybe
Goldens,
Einstein. Yeah. Einstein could
yeah,
have done it because he was, he was one of a kind, but, that's got to be tough. I mean, you're choking up, but you haven't spent 10 years with the dog. Imagine, and it's not just a pet, it's like allows the human to live. Imagine having to, get a new dog. That would be tough.
it is the hardest thing that our clients go through.
Yeah.
It's almost harder than losing their sight. That's how
Wow.
hard it is
Yeah.
because they're with their guide dog 24/7.
Yeah.
And sorry.
No, I'm getting
It
choked up
is,
too. I know it's
it's
a tough thing.
really, yeah. So one of the things that we do when our clients are, we have classes on both of our campuses,
Hmm.
and our clients come to train with us for 2 weeks when they get a new guide dog.
Right.
Half the class typically is brand new; it's their first dog, and half the
Right.
class is getting another dog. So
Replacement. Right. Right.
right, and we do that on purpose because there's we it it's amazing watching the mentoring that sometimes goes on
Hmm.
between clients that have been through the program before, helping those that are just first timers going
Right.
through it. So one of the things that we do for clients who are coming back into class and getting another dog is we actually have a blessing ceremony. The first night that they're on campus, we have a blessing ceremony to, sorry, uh, bless their guide that either is retired or who has passed,
Hmm.
allowing people to open their hearts to this next relationship.
Right.
Yeah,
That's so important. I never would have thought of that, but to make like a formal, thank you for being this awesome dog, and now it's time to move. It's
right.
life. Life has seasons, right? So,
It is life.
wow.
It is life. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Let's talk about the guide dog goes through puppy raising, shows up in San Francisco, and that's got to be tough too for the puppy raisers to give up this puppy that they just spent a year with.
It is. It is.
This is heartbreaking, but it's awesome. It's awesome too because they're puppies. So what do they do when they show up? You know, like when I showed up at the Air Force Academy, I had to go through basic training. They shave my head. They yell at you. You have to go through the assault course. What does
Yep,
what does a
yep.
puppy dog do?
Yeah, well, we don't shave their heads, so just so you know that.
Good.
So it's actually a 12-week program to
Oh,
learn.
only 12 weeks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Right. And it used to be 24 weeks.
Wow.
So that's the power of positive reinforcement training, that we can train a dog with all of its skills in just 12 weeks or 3 months, right?
That saves a lot of money.
It does. It absolutely does. And it allows us to produce more guide dogs to service more clients. Right?
Saving money means more people are helped.
Right, exactly.
Right. Money doesn't grow on trees. Unlike the government, for the government it does, but for the rest of the world, you can't just print money.
Darn it.
Wow. Right. So what do they do in those 12 weeks? That's got to be a busy, and it's the same, you have like a staff that does this.
We do. Yeah. And I will tell you, so they're called guide dog mobility instructors, GDMIs.
Okay.
It takes 3 years of apprenticeship training to become a guide dog mobility instructor.
Wow.
So while there's a lot that goes into training a guide dog, there's a lot that goes into training our staff.
Absolutely.
Because you have to learn not only all the training techniques for a dog, you have to learn about blindness. Mm-hmm. You have to learn about, teaching somebody who's blind. Mm-hmm. You also have to learn how to put two very different personalities together to make a team that's going to be successful.
You mean the dog personality and the person personality?
And the person, right. That's the team, right? So there's two sides to that harness.
Right.
Yeah.
So what background do they have in order to be so you have all these jobs that everybody's going to want, besides cuddler and puppy raiser, the guide dog mobility instructor, what are they? Did they major in animal science, or is there a college requirement, or?
Our guide dog mobility instructors come from all different backgrounds. I mean, some have social work backgrounds, some have animal science backgrounds, some have business backgrounds. What we're looking for, basically, there's nowhere that you can go to school to get a guide dog mobility instructor degree. So we have we create, that here within guide dogs. So we're looking for people who can be good both with people and with dogs.
Right.
So oftentimes people who have a really strong animal background aren't so good with people. Right.
I can see that. Yeah.
So, we're really looking for people who sort of have that educational bent, want to train, want to teach, like people, like dogs.
Right. Yeah. I could see a teacher, a dog person teacher would be a great combination for that. How many do you have? How many folks work there?
So we have overall within Guide Dogs for the Blind, we have 300 staff, and we have 60 guide dog mobility instructors. Yeah.
Wow. So they're kind of that's got to be that's a tough, I would imagine you got to be pretty good to be to get to that level. It's
a rigorous 3-year apprenticeship program, I will say. Yeah. And then there's various levels within our guide dog mobility instructor as well, working all the way up to what we call a master instructor. And what a master instructor is, that's, almost your, dog whisperer, your, client whisperer, that unique person. Really can address some of the more challenging cases.
Right. And you do the same thing in San Francisco and in Portland?
We do. So in our California, on our California campus, in addition to guide dog training, we do all of our breeding and we have all of our administration. In Oregon, we just do training. So it's just purely a training campus, training dogs and clients.
Right. What are the challenges? I mean, I love the Bay Area. I love California. I miss it because I used to go out there all the time and then COVID happened.
Yeah.
But it's expensive. And you're running a nonprofit, which I would assume means people earn nonprofit salaries, right? So they're trying to live in San Francisco on a nonprofit salary. That's got to be a challenge.
It is a challenge. We're a little bit north of San Francisco, which gives, so a lot of our staff actually live a bit north up into Sonoma County, which is a little less expensive to live. I think the other thing that, we're learning from the pandemic is that we've also learned that a number of jobs can be done remotely. And so when we're going to be coming out of this pandemic, we're also looking
Right.
at continuing with some of that remote work, which is hopefully will help with not only commute times, but also, the cost of living in this area. But it is an issue.
So a quick question, Chris, about the dogs. They go through this 12-week training process. And can you describe, like, what are some cool things that dogs have to be able to do or not do?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are
Sure.
the more
So,
interesting things? Yeah.
yeah, a couple of things. One is learning to, when they stop, where they stop, right? So a guide dog is trained literally to stop and sit right on your left side, right next to you, not in front of you, not behind you, right next to you, in perfect alignment with you. Now, the reason for that is, let's just say, if your dog is at an angle to you, you can't see that, right? When you take
Oh,
your
right.
first step, you're going to trip over your dog,
Right.
right?
Right.
So it's really alignment of where a dog stops and sits is critically important. Doesn't sound like it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
Wow. I would
Um,
not have thought. That's healing, right? Called healing.
Healing,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Another thing that we teach a dog to do is back up.
Oh, wow.
Now, that's not a normal dog behavior.
Right.
So the dog will normally turn around, right?
Mm-hmm.
But why is backup important? Because that's part of um, uh, the whole concept of disobeying a command, right? Intelligent disobedience.
Right.
So if I, as the handler, give my dog a command across the street, because from my ear standpoint, I know that I have the crosswalk in my favor and I'm not hearing traffic,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't hear that, electric car,
Right.
right? So I give my dog the command to go forward. The dog has to disobey the command and pull me back away from the street. And the way that they do that is to back up, right? Not turn around so that I end up in the street. Back up.
That's amazing. I
Yeah.
all these Goldens that I've had, I've never been able to teach one to heal, and I've never been able to get one to back up because I've tried both of those things.
Right. Right.
That's
Well,
uh,
the way that we teach a dog to back up, we have what's called a backup chute.
the backup shoot.
Chute, CHUTE.
Wow.
Right. So basically what it is it's basically two pieces of fencing really that
Huh.
are only about that wide apart, right?
Right.
And we put a bowl of food at sort of the end of it,
Right.
right? So the dog definitely wants to go in, right?
Right. Right.
And then what we do is we start backing up that food, right? so that the dog, in order to get now the kibble,
Right.
got to back up. It's kind of like underneath your belly right now. I
Right.
can't turn because the chute's really
Right.
narrow, right?
Right.
And so the dog starts to learn to back up in order to get the kibble.
Hmm.
And then you literally just need to do this a few times before the dog gets that I get the kibble at one end, and if I back my way all the way out of this, gosh, I get kibble at the other end too, right?
Right.
So,
Interesting.
right.
What are the washout tests that, are really hard? Like the organic chemistry of medical school. What's the hard thing for dogs to
Right,
do?
right. So, our GDMIs, our dogs are being trained for a minimum of 4 hours every day, 5 days a week, right?
Wow.
So, um, and the vast majority of that training does not take place on our campuses. It actually takes place out in the community, right?
Hmm.
So our GDMIs are constantly evaluating their dogs, constantly.
Hmm.
And they're how well are they doing in traffic?
Right.
Um, one of the key areas is intelligent disobedience.
Right.
And the way that we train that actually is by putting our dogs into some what we call close calls, right? So we
Right.
actually have a car. We actually have an electric car. So the dogs get used to having to look for a car versus hearing a car, right?
Right.
Um, and the trainer starts to walk them into um, essentially a situation where they're going to be hit. Now, our trainers are never going to allow their dogs to be hit. And the person who's driving our car is our staff member. So
Okay.
this is
They know not to
all,
run over the
we're
dog.
not taking it to chance
Right.
for somebody, right? Somebody
Right.
else,
Right.
right? But the dog gets rewarded for stopping and pulling back, stopping and pulling back. Sometimes that's very scary for the dog, and that
Right.
starts to be an issue that they're having some challenges with that process. The other thing that we're also looking for is in situations where there's lots of people, other animals around. So, if you're working a dog in San Francisco, for instance, there's a lot of homeless
Right.
individuals
Right.
who have, dogs, sometimes
Oh yeah.
cats.
Right.
And so when you're going down the street, your dog has to be completely focused on his work. Is it getting distracted by some of these other animals? Can
Right.
we can we help train that distraction away, or is this going to be something that it's just it's too dicey?
Right.
Um, again, somebody who's blind has to put complete trust in their dog.
Right. That's amazing. Do male or female dogs do better, or are they the same?
That is probably the number one question that
Really?
I get.
Yeah.
Yes, everybody has a specific bias to say, wow,
Right.
I actually think females would do better, or I think males
Right.
would do. They both do just as well. So we
Really?
don't have more males in service, or we don't have more females in service. No, it's
Right.
pretty much 50-50.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have any good stories of like saves maybe out in the real world where a guide dog saved, or any, fails, like real world stories of guide dogs, with their
Oh,
people?
all the time.
Yeah.
And again, I end up, having I cry at some of these because there have been situations where our dogs have, excuse me, taken the hit themselves rather than allowing
Ugh.
their own person to take the hit. So we had that happen, whew, uh, probably 2 years ago, where we had one of our
Mm.
clients that was crossing the street in Portland, and somebody ran the red light,
Hmm.
and uh, pulled our client out of the way. She was safe, but our dog was hit,
Oh, wow.
thrown out of her harness.
That's
It was hit
amazing.
so hard.
I don't think
Yeah,
dogs wouldn't hesitate to do that though, to save a
no.
person. Yeah.
Um, and and the good news, I mean, she was rushed to emergency. They didn't think she'd live. She lived. They thought she'd have cognitive issues. Turns out she didn't. They thought that because she was hit on her left side, that um, she probably would not gain use of that left leg again. And we had a wonderful volunteer who took her into her home for a year, and under guide dog's direction, went through water therapy and all kinds of physical therapy, and so she is walking again. She's not
Wow.
guiding, she's no longer
Right.
guiding,
Right.
but she actually ended up being readopted by her puppy raiser, and so she's
Oh,
living
cool.
the life of leisure, which is really great. But we have story after story after story of you know our dogs who have saved their person from an oncoming car, from falling downstairs. We had one of our dogs. Uh, we have this speaks to the bond between our dogs and our clients. Our dogs start to truly understand, almost on a cellular level, their person. And one of our clients who works in New York City um, was going into her office building with her dog. And it's one of those office buildings where, it's like 400 stories high, and you
Right.
have to take a specific elevator for, your particular floor. And her dog did not take her to the elevator, but took her directly to a bank of sofas. And when she got to that bank of sofas, she sat down and almost immediately had a stroke.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, and the fact that she didn't get into an elevator, um, it probably made a huge difference to her
Right.
recovery, right? And even to saving her life, because somebody saw that, immediately got medical attention. But her dog knew something was wrong, and going
Wow.
in that elevator was not the right thing to do.
That is amazing. Well, actually, there's a good point, because that's a specific job for certain types of dogs, right? And
It
can you talk
is.
about that? What do dogs notice about medical emergencies?
Right, right. And the theory is that, whether you're going to have a stroke or a heart attack, or a seizure, there's hormonal changes in your body that take place, and
Huh.
the dog can smell that, can sense that, smell it.
Right.
Um, in our case, clearly we're not training our dogs along those lines, but it speaks to the bond
Right.
that our dog knew something's not right.
They're
This is
smart
just isn't
animals.
right.
Right.
It's
Right.
not. Yeah.
What type of problems, like autism, or what type of problems might people have that they could use a dog to help with?
Something, what I think is really exciting is there's been an explosion in the service dog world, right?
Right.
There's almost nothing that um, a dog can't be used to help with. So, as I said, our dogs are PTSD, wheelchair
Right.
assist, autism, hearing dogs, search and rescue. Um, they've got dogs now that are, diabetic alert dogs. A lot of our dogs go into diabetic,
Yeah, that's
being
one. Right.
diabetic alert dogs. They're training dogs to sniff cancers that
Right.
can't be detected medically. They're now
Wow.
training dogs to sniff COVID.
Wow.
Interesting. Yeah.
So you said
Um,
hearing dog. So are there guide dogs for the deaf?
Um, there are. So um, deaf blind is a really challenging situation uh, for using a guide dog, because in order to use a guide dog, you have to give a command to your guide dog,
Right.
and part of that is based on your own hearing.
Uh,
But we do have dogs that become um, hearing dogs for the deaf. And what a hearing dog will do is alert you to there's somebody at the front door. Um, the telephone is ringing.
mhm.
Um, those types of things. And the way that they do that is that, they'll come and they'll paw at you, they'll run to the front door, they'll come back and paw at you, run to the front door, those kinds of things. Yeah,
Hmm.
that help you.
Y- Those stories that you were telling, like the saves and those amazing stories, that sounds like a movie.
Yes.
I'm just thinking out loud, like, or a TV series of,
Oh,
cool guide dog stories.
absolutely. I mean, I think for me, what, I love seeing again is that human animal bond.
Right.
And, um, sort of that symbiotic relationship that occurs when
Right.
when we're willing to do it, right?
Right.
Our dogs are always willing to do it. It's oftentimes we're not willing to do it,
Right.
but um, it's powerful. It really is.
Can you talk? You just talked about deafness a little bit, but your mission is to help people with blindness. Can you talk about? I mean, I think everybody imagines how awful it would be to be blind, or if you had to lose something, losing your eyes would be the worst, or whatever. So I know there's degrees of blindness. It's not like you have your eyes closed all the time necessarily. So can you just talk about what it's like to be blind, that side of the story, the human side?
Sure, sure. So, um, you know, I I think probably most people think, their worst fear is losing their sight, right? And that their
Right.
life would be over. I can assure you that it is not. And I look around at our clients who are amazing in the things that they do. We have professional athletes, people who work in business, people who raise families, um, people who do all kinds of things. You just have to learn to do it a little bit differently. But the clients, what's happening is it's interesting that there has been a change in sort of in blindness in general. So childhood blindness has decreased significantly. And the reason is because most childhood blindness occurred because babies were born prematurely and put into incubators with pure oxygen. And the pure oxygen destroyed the retinas. So we basically created blind babies. And we figured that out in the late 80s and stopped doing it.
Wow. I had no
So
idea.
with that, we've seen a real dip in the number of children who essentially are blind. It doesn't mean that, I mean, there is childhood blindness, but
Right.
not at the rate that it used to be.
Right.
Most people lose their sight as adults.
Right.
Um, and that, there's a variety of reasons why people lose their sight. Some is due to trauma, some sort of head trauma. Um, some is due to, there's all kinds of different diseases that end up causing blindness.
Right.
So it's a transition. It's definitely a transition when somebody loses their sight. Um, 70% of our clients actually are what we call visually impaired. So
Hmm.
they're legally blind. They need assistance to be able to live their life, but they can see, light and shadow. They may be able to see certain types of colors. they may be able to see peripherally, but that's macular degeneration, right? Central
Right.
vision goes away, you can see
Right.
peripherally, or
Right.
you have no peripheral vision, um, which is, and can only see through what looks like a pinhole.
Right.
That's retinitis pigmentosa. Um, and so what we do at Guide Dogs is we um, help people use whatever sight they have to the best of their ability, um, with the assistance of their guide dog.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
One,
that's so cool. That's amazing.
one
When
of
did
the other little
yeah.
facts is, we breed yellow labs and black labs. And the reason we breed the two colors is because some people can see light colors and some people can see dark colors.
Oh
So we
wow.
want to pair somebody with a dog they can see.
I had no idea. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Um how wow. So how long have guide dogs been a thing? Because people have been blind ever since, Adam and Eve. So
Right.
this is probably
Right.
going back a long time, I would guess.
Yeah. So the very first guide dog program started right after World War One.
Hmm.
Um, we actually started in 1942. Guide Dogs for the Blind started in 1942, and we were started by a group of individuals from the military who were wanting to train dogs to serve veterans that were blinded in the war.
Hmm.
And so the first dogs, the first guide dog trainers were military dog trainers, and the first
Hmm.
guide dogs were German Shepherds, because that's
Wow.
what people were familiar with training.
Right.
Um,
Are there any stories like from the Middle Ages or from the pharaohs in Egypt, or like are there any, ancient guide dog stories, or have you ever researched that?
wow. That's a great question, Terry.
Yeah.
My guess is I'm sure there are. I'm
Right.
not personally aware of any, but dogs have been in our lives now for over 4,000 years, right?
Right. Right.
And so you sort of have to believe that somewhere along the way, um, you know, dogs have been assisting us for so long
Right.
that I'm sure back 2, 3, 400 years ago, we were using dogs in some way to help us. Yeah.
So, there's another potential movie.
Yes, there
um,
is. There
the
is.
history of guide dogs. It would be really cool. How much does it cost, to run the organization, and how much does it cost for a puppy? And, it's not probably cheap, I would think. I think the drug sniffing, bomb sniffing dogs that the Homeland Security, I've heard that those are the government pays $30,000 each or something like that just to
Mhm.
get the dog. But like, what are the costs here?
Yeah. So all of our services are free to our clients.
Hmm.
And the reason for that is that we want people to be able to get a guide dog if they need a guide dog, not if only if they can afford a guide dog.
Right.
So all of our services are free, and what that entails is, um, we fly you out to our campuses where you train with us for 2 weeks. You obviously get your guide dog. Um, we have a lifelong relationship with you, so we continue to follow up with you and support you in ensuring that the team is working well together. And we also pay for the veterinary costs of your dog.
Oh, wow. Are there
Um,
extra vet costs or just normal dog
well,
stuff?
um, so our dogs are trained athletes, so
Right.
it's really important that they are kept in peak condition. So that means you're at least once a year you're going to your vet to make certain that everything's fine with your dog, that they're getting all their vaccinations. But you've been a dog owner, things do come up,
Hmm.
and so we want to make certain that a dog's needs are addressed right away, and that people aren't, gee, do I pay my rent or do I, um, take my dog to the vet? So,
Right. That's amazing. I just laughed. I was thinking of medical things. We had dogs get bit by snakes because I live in Texas. My one dog, who was the sweetest dog, but she was not the smartest dog in the litter. We were going fishing and there was a fishing hook and she was going for it. And I was like, no, 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 no. And then she bit it. And so we had to take her in with a fishing hook in her lip,
oh,
to
ouchie.
cut, to
Yep.
cut to get anyway. Um, Back to Einstein, years ago, walking in the desert at nighttime, he just stopped us and there was a rattlesnake like 2
Oh
feet
my
away.
God.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so this dog was really smart. The other dogs were
Yeah.
stupid and eating fish
No.
hooks, but anyway,
Oh,
they're all lost. Like you said, they're all perfect in their own way. But
they are. They
the
are. They are.
so being able to, provide that service for free is not cheap, is it? Like, to
It's
provide
not.
a 10-year
It's
service, is it like
right.
$100,000 or what do you
Right.
rough estimate, something
So,
like that?
so the cost of a guide dog to us um, is approximately $100,000. And
I guessed right.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, you did. And that's because, again, not every single dog makes it all the way through the program, but we're putting all of these resources into every single dog,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, so it's costly. So we're always, looking at, so we have a large project that's going on. It's been going on for about 2 years to look at how we can do a better job of increasing the success rate. About 50% of our dogs make it through the program.
Hmm.
How can we increase that to 60%?
Right.
That
Because
will
they'll save
allow
money.
us to save money and serve more clients, right?
Right. Exactly.
So, and we're making headway. And we're, basically we're looking at every single touch point along the way, the first 8 to 10 weeks of life on our campuses, that year with our puppy raiser,
Right.
things that we're doing with training once we're, the dogs are back.
I bet you could make an AI system where the dog does this, the dog doesn't do that, whatever. You put in a bunch of parameters and computers might help you predict better. Like, talk to Major League Baseball, these execs that do Moneyball and data.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
maybe that's a way to look at improving that.
Yeah. There's been work that's been done and we've been looking into it as well is, um, looking at a 6-week-old puppy and, watching their behaviors,
Hmm.
we predict the success of that dog at
Yeah.
that point in time. Because if you can reasonably predict, the success of that 6-week-old puppy, then maybe, and if it looks like this is a puppy that's not going to make it through the program, then you don't put it through the program, right? And you
Right.
don't incur those costs,
Right.
right, in the program. So, that the challenge of all of this is we're all unique beings, right?
Right.
Yeah. So,
Well, not yeah. But there's other things to do. Like, I think another benefit. Not only do you help your clients, but you provide a lot of dogs to other service organizations that they're
we do.
probably their top grads, I would guess, because your puppy raiser program is pretty amazing.
It
Um,
is. It is fantastically
is there
amazing.
a waiting list? Are there a lot of people that want guide dogs, but there just aren't enough of them?
There is a waiting list. Because our training ended up slowing down a little bit, this past year.
Mm-hmm.
Our wait list has really, jumped up. So we're looking at, how can we sort of speed this up? How can we serve more clients over the course of this next year? Because we don't want people waiting, 1 year or 2 years to get a guide dog. If you need a guide dog, we want to be able to serve you.
Right. But this $100,000 cost, I mean, so fundraising is important for you. And
Fundraising is
yeah,
critically important to us
yeah.
because we also receive no government funding.
Oh,
So
wow. There's no government support at all.
there's no government support at all. So we exist because our communities support us and
Wow.
we're grateful to that. So yes, fundraising is critically important to us.
Right.
Yes.
So even, if you provide a guide dog to a soldier, the VA wouldn't cover your costs, or there's no Medicare provision. Wow.
No, and interestingly enough, it's and I don't understand this, but in the health codes, blindness is not considered a medical condition. I know.
I know they pay for surgeries that they probably shouldn't be paying for, and they don't consider blindness a medical condition. That's insane. Wow. So
Mhm.
your budget is 20 some million, I think. Did you say that?
50.
50 million? And that's all wealthy donors and people giving $5 and $10, and that's just donations. $50 million a year. That's a lot of donations. On the nonprofit scale, that sounds like you're fairly high up. It's not the Red Cross, but it's a pretty sizable nonprofit. Wow.
Yeah.
One of the things that I do, Chris, I do this thing called Cameo. So you can go online and sign up for a video from a celebrity or whatever.
Oh,
And so people can request a greeting from Terry Virts, and
wow.
um, I'll be like, happy birthday or whatever.
Yeah.
And I've decided I donate part of that to guide dogs, and then part of
Thank
it to the Innocence Project, which is a project that helps get innocent people out of jail. Anyway,
you.
so that is a thought for the listeners right now. If you have this unique way to, most people can't do cameos, but anyway, that's the way I, you know, am able to
Thank you.
support guide dogs. Yeah.
Thank you. And everything helps. Every
Right.
single thing helps. It really and truly does, and it makes a difference.
Well, the airplane is one in-kind donation,
Yes.
right? And you need
Yeah.
volunteers to do puppy raising and
Right.
cuddling.
Right. Right.
Um, if you were a vet and you wanted to donate some vet services, that might help.
It would. It absolutely would. And again, our clients are all over North America.
Right.
So that's US and Canada.
Right.
Our dogs are seen by vets
Right.
all over. If somebody wanted to, donate theirs, because guide dogs will pay, normally pays for those services, but
Right.
if you wanted to donate your services, we would be very grateful for
Yeah.
that.
I'm just trying to think of all the ways. And then you need money. I mean, you have salaries to pay, you have to
Mhm.
pay the hotel and food bills of the client. There's obviously a big money need.
We do. And, we encourage people, hopefully people are, inspired about the mission, based on our discussion today.
Yeah.
Hopefully people will go see, Pick of the Litter.
Yeah.
Um,
Watch that movie. It's amazing. Yeah.
it is. I've seen it. I can't even tell you, but I cry every single time.
I know it's not fair. It's like not fair.
Yeah.
But
But
you're expanding, right? Is there a Texas in your future?
we are not looking to create more infrastructure.
Okay.
Um, but we're looking, and the reason is because infrastructure is incredibly expensive,
Right.
right? To not
Right.
only build and run.
Brick and mortar.
Um,
Yeah.
but we are looking at, again, COVID has helped us sort of look at our training model differently. So
Right.
rather than always bringing everybody to our campuses, the way we've been able to train this year is actually by doing what we call in-homes.
Hmm.
So sending our trainers out to train people in their homes, right?
Hmm.
And so one of the models that we're actually looking at is, as we get clusters of clients, rather than building, some sort of set infrastructure somewhere else, is basically go, let's say, to Dallas. We have 5 clients in Dallas that need to be trained. Is basically we, train out of a hotel there for
Mhm.
2 weeks.
Right. That
And
would be
there's,
interesting.
yeah,
Or so instead of bringing them to
right, to California and
California,
to Oregon,
do
right.
do the dogs get continuing education? Like you're a CPA, and so you have to get your certain number of hours every year. I know this. So do dogs get that?
Yes. So one of the qualifications in order to get a guide dog is that you have a need to go somewhere, or every single day. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go into an office
Right.
but you want to get out and you want to walk the neighborhood
Right.
but that's the continuing education, right? So a guide dog is, if a guide dog is not worked every single day, it's
Right.
going to lose its skills.
Right.
So that's the continuing education part. Yeah. Is that you
Right.
guys get out and about and you do something.
Right. That keeps them alert.
Right.
Well, what would you, what else, anything else you'd want to say to the listeners today about the program?
I would. I would like to say I'm hoping that people are inspired. I'm hoping that they would want to support this mission because it truly is life changing.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I truly believe is that when you empower just one person to live their life the way they want to live, that one person then positively impacts their family, their neighborhood, their entire community. So with every team we graduate, we impact a significant number of people throughout North America. And so I hope people would be inspired and I hope people would go to our website and support the mission. So the website is www.guidedogs.com. And hopefully people would love to make a gift.
Yes, absolutely. It's an amazing organization and it's so cool. When the things calm down, I definitely want to come out and see
Oh,
these
would love it.
facilities.
Would love
Yeah.
it. We have a brand new puppy center that we just built. And yes, we'll
How
put a
cool is that?
puppy in your
I need a
hand.
puppy center.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you've got me motivated. I'm going to go take the dogs for a walk right now.
All
So,
right. Thank you.
well, thanks so much, Chris. This was awesome. And let's stay in touch and let's talk about some of these movie ideas. I kind of really like a few of these.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for your time today. It
Okay.
was such a pleasure, Terry.
All right. We'll talk later. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.